Teen Challenge is a recovery program with a Christian approach. You know, we make disciples. We help men to overcome life-controlling problems. We help them to get free from addiction, chemical abuse issues. It could be a variety of life-controlling issues, whether it be gambling, addiction, or perhaps criminal behavior, or all the above. You know, a lot of times these guys that are involved with certain crimes committed under the influence, so things that they would probably not do if they weren't high or maybe motivated, you know, to do burglaries or steal because of their addiction driving them, you know, and the fact that their lives are so torn apart, they don't really hold jobs, they're not responsible in the community, so they turn to criminal activity. So we work a lot with the law enforcement. We work a lot with the court systems. You know, the public defenders, they know about Teen Challenge, and probation officers know about us, and judges respect what we do, and they utilize our program as an alternative to prison. Well, when the guys come to Teen Challenge, it's usually because they've exhausted many other avenues to try to get help, whether it be multiple clinical addiction treatment centers. Perhaps they've been on probation and failed and had to go to prison. You know, of course, have broken marriages, broken family units. They've lost employment, you know, because of their life-controlling issues. So what we're doing is we're teaching them really to go back and lay a new foundation so that they're not just focused on addiction treatment or chemical abuse treatment, but they're focused on themselves as a whole person. You know, so what we're trying to instill in them with our Christian values and our training and discipleship and mentoring program is to help them be responsible, adult, mature, diligent. We're helping them to develop self-awareness. We're helping them to prosper, to believe that they can prosper, as opposed to all the negative emotions and negative thoughts. And, you know, instead of recycling through that failure mode, they have a chance to succeed and to believe they can make it. So that's a big deal. Well, to be very transparent with you, I had my own problems growing up in southern New Jersey, and you know, I was in a Irish Catholic large family that my family all liked to drink. So I grew up watching my uncles, you know, abuse alcohol, really, and it seemed like they were having fun, you know, laughing and partying and all that sort of thing, but you know, so I started drinking at an early age, and that really affected me, of course, and set me back, and then I started to smoke pot, and then I got into some other drug use and kind of set it aside when I first got married. I got married young, but then, you know, those issues came back, and they really took a hold of my life and affected me, and so I needed help really bad. I got to a place where the AA program and going to those meetings and a couple secular treatments, it just didn't do it for me. It would give me temporary success, but it didn't give me permanent relief and victory, so to speak. So somebody told me about this place called Teen Challenge, you know, with a silly name that sounded like it was for kids. And here I was, a 27-year-old married man with a small business and 4 children. But I submitted because I was desperate for change. And so I went to Philadelphia Teen Challenge, and it changed my life forever. So that's how I got involved. And after going back to the secular business that I was part of in construction, I just felt an emptiness and a real desire, a calling, if you will, to help other people. And I really loved Teen Challenge for what they did for me. So that's what the beginning was, you know, and that's how we got started with it. When I interview people, let's put it this way, you know, I already know that they're messed up. I already realize that they're not trustworthy. They're unreliable. They're manipulative, to say the least. They lie. They they're corrupt. But if I hear the cry of their soul, if their attitude says, I know I'm messed up, I know I've blown it, I've failed, but I really want help. I want to change. So I'm looking for a person that is humble enough to not argue, not complain about how long the program's going to be or what the rules are, but they just want help. So, working with family members and mostly with professionals within the court system, like I referred to earlier, the probation people, and maybe a public defender who's assigned a case, and maybe it's a first offense, and maybe it's a young man, and they discern and figure that Teen Challenge would be a good match, because one of the great reasons we succeed is we spend so much time and invest so much into each individual life. That's what brings about the holistic and the permanent and the lasting change. Because you're helping men deal with the real root, which is personal identity, self-worth, their issues that relate to painful emotional trauma and fatherlessness. We see a lot of that. So these, deep issues of the heart, they need solutions that are going to be very personal, very involved, and take some time. So the people that donate to Teen Challenge are really donating for us to spend the extended period of time that it takes to turn a life around. What we often see when we're successful at Teen Challenge in turning a life around, what we see are men coming into the program who are fearful and bitter, wounded, and prideful. A lot of pride. They may be messed up, but they want to argue. They want to self-defend and self-protect. So we see them coming in with all these hang-ups and all this, shame and guilt and pain, but they're masking it, of course, with, bravado and false pride and all this sort of thing. But when guys begin to humble themselves and begin to identify hope, and they begin to sense that, God loves them, they begin to realize that they can be forgiven for their past sins and their mistakes and their failures. And when they know that you love them, then they change. Then they want to learn, and they begin to change. So what we see when they start to progress in the program is they begin to take responsibility. They begin to have a real godly sorrow. A sorrow that doesn't say, hey, I got caught, please don't punish me, but a sorrow that says, how can I make it right? What can I do to make things better with maybe they are a deadbeat dad and they haven't paid child support. It's not because they don't care at all about their child. It's because they're unreliable and they can't hold a job, and they're ashamed of themselves. So when they begin to work through those issues and set aside their pride and their fear, then we can help them to build that bridge back, to talk maybe to their, maybe they're divorced and they haven't gotten along with their ex-wife, but maybe now they have the courage and the humility, and they're willing to take enough responsibility to reach out to the mother of their child and say, hey, I'm sorry for what I did, and I'd like to make it better. I'd like to do what I can to help you believe in me again. And so we're helping them work through those issues. And if they've stolen from a previous employer, if you see that they want to make it right and they don't just run and hide from it, but they care and they have genuine remorse, so then we can help them discover the value of making amends, and going back and trying to, rebuild. And then when they get out of the program, self-awareness is a big thing that is lost. When you do drugs and alcohol, when you have trauma in your life, or terrible abuses, because some of these men have been abused, so therefore their pain doesn't get dealt with, and they cause pain in other people's lives. So when we see guys begin to heal inside and develop some self-awareness, then they realize, hey, this is where I fit into my family unit. This is where I can make a difference. This is where I fit in my community. I've wreaked havoc in this community. Now maybe I can get a job, pay restitution, take care of my child support that's been in arrears for God knows how long, and I can be a blessing. Part of our program is helping these guys learn the value of community service, and we help with the Harvest Table feeding program at the Methodist Church in town. We have our re-entry level students go and serve every other Monday. Well, every Monday, but we rotate the men so that no guy has to do it every single Monday, because now they're working and they're tired and all that. So we do things in the community like shovel snow from downtown, and we help people move. If maybe an older person who doesn't have any muscle, we can get the guys in the van and go down and help out. So we do things like that. And so when we see guys in the reentry phase and then graduating the program, working in the community, and they have some sense of this, where they belong, all of that is lost when you're addicted. You're not maturing, you're not growing. You don't have any self-awareness and you don't have any self-worth. So you think, when a person thinks they're worthless, then they become hopeless. And then really there's really no chance for them to recover. The men that come here, first of all, they're from ages 18 to whatever. I mean, we've had a guy 60 years old in the program in the past. That's very rare. But we may have a guy 50 years old. Average age is usually mid to late 20s. But your question was, I forgot.
What drugs are
what drugs?
Used?
Yeah, so we see still a lot of guys that are hooked on meth. Meth is devastating, of course, and it drives men to do like really foolish things, to say the least. It tears them apart physically, and it really brings them down fast. But we're seeing a lot of heroin addiction. An old drug that's kind of made a resurgence in the culture. A lot of prescription drug addiction issues. A lot of dysfunction and pain going on there. It might stem from an initial injury, and then these guys get hooked on these meds, or it can just be that whole subculture that deals with prescription drugs, and so that's a big problem. And I get phone calls and people ask me, do you deal with dual addiction? And to be honest with you, our approach is so it's spiritual, it's a grassroots approach. It's holistic, so you're dealing with body, soul, and spirit. You're helping the person in every way you can. So we don't look at addiction and we don't distinguish between different drugs and different dysfunction. We say, to fix a human life, you need God's help and God's grace, and you need hope. And in our opinion, you need faith that brings about that hope, that gives you that ability to persevere rather than give up when the going gets tough. Because we all know the going is going to get tough. Life is hard. There's problems. So drug addicts often run away from those problems, and they don't know how to deal with them because they never did. So our training and our mentoring and our counseling is really just about applying biblical principles to everyday life and giving these guys the balance between a hard work ethic, self-worth, willingness to serve others instead of making it all about themselves. Because when you're inward thinking too much, that leads to depression. And so we don't find that antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication, we don't find them to be permanent solutions. We feel like if a man can find real identity, self-worth, purpose, and vision, and he becomes responsible and hardworking, and he has real, genuine hope and faith, we find that's the by far the more permanent solution to these dysfunctions. It's a repeated mantra, but you know, it sounds maybe cliche, but really it starts in the family. I mean, the breakdown of the family unit does a great deal of damage. Even if you have a divorce in a household, and even if it's a peaceful or amicable separation and divorce situation where there's children involved, those children are going to be affected. They're going to lose a sense of innocence, and security is going to be lost. And you know, many families do a great job of patching that together and letting the child, you know, know that he's loved and cared for and all that. But it's still painful. So if you don't have a father and a mother that are there for you, that's gonna be a difficult thing. So that's one of the main things that we see is a pattern of broken families, broken homes. That's one item. And then other than that, I think it's about, you know, teaching men to be men. I mean, you know, holding people accountable. You know, if they're not meeting their obligations, their responsibilities, their duties, they should be dealt with. They should be answerable. You know, so and that parallels with this whole family thing that I was just talking about, because that's what's lost: discipline and structure and teaching and mentoring and you know, providing a role model, providing examples. You know, I think young people have to be held accountable, and they have to be challenged, but also they have to be encouraged to know that, again, a cliche, but they can be somebody. You know, they are somebody. You know, God doesn't make junk; He makes people, and He gives them grace. So one of the things that we teach our men here, when they come into this program and they're hurting and they're angry and they're depressed and they're making all kinds of excuses because they can't face themselves because it's too painful, and they don't even know how to do it. You know, one of the things that we're doing is we're affirming them that they're significant. We're telling them that there's hope and there's an answer, but at the same time, we're not just consoling them, and we're not letting them see themselves as victims. We're telling them, hey, you know what? You failed. You're wrong. You need to man up, and you need to take responsibility for your life and your actions. Because you were abused doesn't mean it's okay for you to be an abuser. You know, because you didn't have a father doesn't mean it's okay for you not to be there for your child. You don't have any excuses for your failure. The good news of the gospel is you don't need an excuse. God already loves you and forgives you, but you do have to get on the ball and do the right thing. So we're just providing that counsel and that support system and that training to teach men to be responsible, to be hardworking, to care about their community, to honor their parents, you know, not to judge them. So these are some of the things that we deal with and work on. I get lots of these calls, lots, every day, and I spend a lot of time, I think, you know, phone counseling, just trying to console a grandparent, a wife, you know, a parent whose son is all messed up, and they begin to tell me, you know, that he won't do this, he doesn't hold a job, you know, he doesn't, he stole from us, and so one of the big things I have to tell people right off the bat is you have no power to change that loved one's life. You cannot change them, and it's not your job to do it. You can always love them, and you can always tell them that you care about them, and you'll always love them and care for them, but you cannot bail them out of their problems. So I have to encourage people often to let go and let their loved one fall on his face. And it's a very scary prospect, because these guys that are addicted, anything could go wrong. But it's not the parent's job. When the individual is of age and they rebel and they go against what they know deep down in their heart is right, then they have to deal with those consequences. So we have to tell families, back off, let them fail. Don't help them by enabling them to stay stuck. And maybe in their pain and their failure, they'll eventually come to their senses, at least enough to cry out and ask for help. So that's a big thing. And with young kids in school, perhaps, that are struggling with these types of peer pressure issues, and whether it be sexuality or addiction, or illicit drug use, getting drunk, whatever the case may be, I tell parents, you got to fight and do battle with those teenagers, and it's miserable at times. But I'm like, you got to fight for their soul. In other words, you cannot compromise. You cannot say, well, I just give up. Everybody else is doing it. As long as you don't drive, go ahead and drink. You can't make those concessions. You have to say, these are the rules of my home. This is the way it's going to be. I'm the parent. You're the underage person. You're going to do what I tell you to do, and you got to hold your ground. And it can be really tough, but you got to confront them when you suspect them of doing something wrong in this way. If their story doesn't line up, and if they're not accountable for what they're doing and where they are, you got to discipline them in any way you can do it. Take away their cell phone, take away their car, whatever you can do as a parent. You got to fight this fight, because if you just let go and succumb, it could get really, really bad. Dr. Holm will bring in different experts and different organizations to deal with similar problems. I think Teen Challenge is just a place that offers men hope, and is willing to invest the time to get to know the person, to pray with them, to cry with them, to train them and help them along. We help men find jobs. We help men get their teeth fixed. We help men facilitate taking care of all sorts of issues and problems that they just would ignore otherwise. But I think what I want to say is, we're not in competition with other programs. We're experts in our field, and we're doing this program, and we're making a big difference, And so we all work together for the good, different organizations and different programs, and we're just that place that is Christian, and our value systems are uncompromising, but we love the guys, and love never fails, the Bible says. And we believe, and one of our firm beliefs that separates us a little bit from some of the other treatment centers, is we don't view the addiction issue as a disease necessarily, and we don't view it as the main problem. We look at the person's whole being, and the spiritual component is major, and the soul and the body all work together. The soul being the way we think, and the way we feel, and the way we make our decisions. So we minister to all of those areas more than we look at the addiction as the main culprit. We want to help men discover vision, hope, and a sense of self-worth, and really to get that healing deep down inside that really has nothing to do with science, or the medical stuff. It's really about the heart.